It's so great to see everyone here. Welcome to the Climate Action Crash Course, all ages webinar. Happy Earth Day. Such an exciting day. So happy that everyone is here, that we're able to come together and to use this time to talk about climate change, to hear from some amazing environmental activists who are already out there taking these actions, and to also get some inspiration as to how you can take climate action and what you can do to change the world. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and start and share my screen. If everyone just bears with me for a sec. Haven't always been the most tech person, so if we have any problems, just be patient with me. All right. So my name is Sarah Goody. I am the founder of Climate Now. I am 16 years old, and Climate Now was started in 2019 after I saw in my own community a lack of climate education. And I said to myself, how is it that the generation that's most impacted by climate change generally doesn't even understand what it is, or have the empowerment and have the resources to go out there and to make a difference. So over the past 2 years, I've worked with so many other incredible youth, just like Sienna, who's on this call with us today, who's a volunteer at Climate Now, in educating youth about this issue and also giving them these key resources to go out and make a difference in their communities. So Climate Now directly impacts youth through going straight into schools and into classrooms and talking with students about this issue. To date, we've talked with over 10,000 students at 70 plus schools from around the world, ranging from places like Africa to India to Italy, and of course here in the United States. And then we've also worked with about 30 plus volunteers who work within our organization, like Sienna, who are doing this work. So if you have any questions, you need anything throughout this webinar, please reach out to either me or Sienna. Both of us have this fancy background here, and let us know if you need anything. And with that, let's get into it. So the points that we will be going over today are just a recap of climate change. For those of you who might not understand as well what climate change is, we've got you covered. For those of you who have a better understanding, this might be kind of an overview, but hopefully you'll also learn something new. We're then going to go into an introduction of what the climate movement is, what climate action is. We're going to look at what is intersectionality. Why do we talk about climate justice? And then we're going to do our panel with our guest speakers. We have Monica, we have Hannah, we have Robbie, we have Apurva, we have Jocelyn, we have Shiv, all incredible environmental activists who are going out there and making a difference in their own communities. So you'll get to hear all about them, what they're doing, and get to ask them some questions. Then we will be doing a giveaway, 15 in total, including last week. So 10 people will win a special edition copy of Alyssa Milano's book, Hope, and also a chocolate surprise from Tony Chocolonely's sustainable chocolate brand, which I have had before and is honestly my favorite chocolate in the whole wide world. So I'm really excited for some of you to be winning these prizes and to get a treat from Tony's, and also to get Alyssa's book, Hope. So we will be doing that giveaway at the end, and then we'll finish on some closing remarks, some next steps, and just an overall celebration, because it is Earth Day and it is a time to celebrate and to get excited. So with that, let's talk. What is climate change? So we hear all the time, global warming, climate change, but what is it really? Right. So the definition of climate change is a long-term change that we're seeing of global temperatures and other characteristics in our atmosphere. That might be a little confusing, but don't worry, we're going to expand on that in just a minute. So it's important to remember when we're talking about climate change is that the world's climate has changed many times before. This time, what's different is that it's a direct result of human activity. Right. So why are we calling this climate change and not weather change? Well, in order to understand that, we've got to look at what weather is and what climate is. So when we're talking about weather, we're talking about the conditions outside right now in a specific place. So I just got off a call with a bunch of third and fourth graders, and I was talking with them about weather, and they were sharing with me, what the weather is like all around the world in the places that they're at. So we had some people saying that it was super rainy, that it was stormy out. We had another student say that it was actually really hot and really humid out. And then back where I am, it's pretty hot, but we have a lot of clouds out in the sky. So, the overall point from that is that weather is different everywhere. Weather is talking about the conditions outside in a specific place at a specific time, and it changes pretty frequently. That's why oftentimes we use a weather app to tell us what the weather is like that day or that week, or we might listen to a weather person on the TV to tell us what that weather is going to be like. Now, when we're talking about climate, we're talking, more long term. We're talking about the temperature conditions that are expected in a specific region. So if you were to have a climate app, it would pretty much say the same thing for several years. So when we're talking about climate change, we're talking about how our Earth's climate is not staying the same. It's actually starting to change, and our temperatures are starting to increase, and our planet is getting warmer. So we're going to look really quickly at this video that talks about carbon dioxide. So climate change is caused by a number of things, but one of the things that's causing climate change is a rise in greenhouse gas emissions and in carbon dioxide emissions more specifically. So carbon dioxide is a molecule very similar to oxygen. It's something that we can't see, but something that we need on this planet. But when it gets dangerous is when we have too much of it. So think about it like if you have candy. I mean, if you have candy like one time a week, that's all good. But if you start to have candy every single day and for morning, for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, that might start to get a problem. So what we're looking at with carbon dioxide is when we have something in small amounts, it's okay. And sometimes it's even good for us. But when we have it in these excess extreme amounts, that's where things start to get dangerous and start to get a little bit tricky. So with that, I am going to go ahead and play this video, and then we're going to look at what different things are producing these carbon emissions.
Lately, we've been hearing a lot about global warming, and words like carbon footprint, climate shift, carbon dioxide, and climate change. But what is carbon? And what does it have to do with climate change? Carbon is everywhere in the ecosystem, and it is always moving. Some of it is floating in the atmosphere. Plants absorb carbon from the air and store it in their bodies. When animals eat plants, they eat carbon. And when something bigger eats those animals, they're having a carbon snack too. But that carbon won't stay still for long. When an animal poops or something dies, carbon moves around again. Some of it is held in the soil for a while. And eventually, most of it ends up back in the atmosphere. The same type of process happens in the oceans too. Most of the carbon dioxide gas on Earth is actually dissolved in ocean water. Some of the carbon from dead plants and animals was trapped underground, and over millions and millions of years, it turned into coal, oil, and gas. And that's pretty much how the system works. Some carbon has stayed deep underground for millions of years, but the rest moves around the ecosystem from the air to plants to animals and back into the atmosphere. And that's the story of the carbon cycle. Well, it was, until we came along. We've been cutting down a lot of forests that used to absorb carbon from the atmosphere. And we've been digging up carbon from deep underground and burning it for energy. Doing that pumps that old carbon back into the air. By getting rid of plants and burning lots of fossil fuels, we've changed the system. The atmosphere is filling up with carbon faster than plants and oceans can absorb it. All this extra carbon in the air is like a blanket around the Earth that traps in extra heat from the sun. And things are changing all over the globe. But now that we know that we are part of this.
All right, so we are going to get into those impacts in just a second. Let's go here. All right. So when we're looking at what is creating these excess carbon emissions, there's a lot of different things. Some of that is from transportation. We use fossil fuels in many cases for our cars, for our planes. And when we burn those fossil fuels, that is putting a ton of carbon dioxide into our atmosphere, and it's also leading to air pollution. When we're looking at what do we eat a meal, 3 times a day, every single day of the week, every single year. So our diet is therefore going to have a huge impact on our environment. So things like animal agriculture are a big contributor to climate change and to rising carbon emissions, but also more specifically, rising greenhouse gas emissions and methane emissions, which are actually more potent and more dangerous than carbon emissions. We look at things like electricity. Where are we getting that electricity from? Is that coming from fossil fuels? And if so, those fossil fuels are putting more carbon dioxide into our atmosphere. Our carbon emissions come from everything like clothes, transportation, plastic. By 2050, there's supposed to be more plastic in the ocean than fish. Take a second. That's absolutely insane. Looking at where our products are getting shipped from. Are we doing deforestation and cutting down trees? How is that impacting climate change? Just looking at the technology that we're using, how is that putting more carbon dioxide into our atmosphere? The fast fashion industry. I could go on and on and on because we do so many things every single day that are contributing to rising carbon emissions. All right. So now that we understand what climate change is, why does it matter? Why are we even talking about this in the first place? Well, climate change has 3 main and what I think are the most important impacts on our planet. And that first impact is on nature. So I grew up in Northern California, and I always thought that wildfires were just a normal part of life. And it wasn't until 6th grade that I finally understood that those fires weren't so normal after all. Because our planet is warming, that is fueling natural disasters like wildfires, like tornadoes, like hurricanes. And it's also contributing to things like sea level rise, ocean acidification, and the destruction of some of our key ecosystems. So because our planet is getting warmer, it's getting hotter, it's getting drier, that climate is changing, it's making things like wildfires not only easier to start, but easier to spread and to catch and go over huge amounts of land really, really quickly. That second impact is on animals and wildlife. So I'm going to go ahead and just list off some animals off the top of my head. I just want you to think if you know this animal, if you like this animal, if you care about this animal. Going monkeys, dolphins, sharks, tigers, let's see, sloths, lemurs, turtles, stingrays. Every single animal that I just mentioned is either endangered or could be endangered and extinct because of climate change. So millions of species are at risk of extinction today because that's more than 38% of animals on our planet, and that's because of climate change. I mean, after all, these animals rely on these ecosystems and they rely on our nature. So when our nature is changing, when it's collapsing, when we see these huge wildfires, when we're seeing sea level rise, that's changing the conditions in that place that they live. That's making it harder for them to adapt, for them to live in that specific place, and for them to repopulate. And then finally, and what oftentimes is the most scary to talk about, is the impact that climate change has on humans. Because it's really hard to live in a world where our wildlife and our nature aren't thriving. Climate change threatens our basic properties of life, which are food, which is water, which is shelter. If you're constantly running away from these different natural disasters, if all of a sudden our ecosystems aren't working in harmony, then things are going to start to get really messy, and they're going to get messy really, really fast. So now that we know, those 3 impacts, how does climate change impact wildlife? How does climate change impact humans and nature? Let's just look on the bright side. So what are people actually doing about it? And this brings us to the youth climate movement. So over the past few years, young people from around the world have been engaging in climate actions to combat climate change and to help our environment. And that's because they said enough is enough. I know that climate change is impacting my generation. I know that climate change is important. I know that it's going to impact people, not only today, but in the future. So we're going to do something about it, because if adults don't, then who is? So young people have been doing everything from attending protests and starting protests to picking up beaches and leading in plastic pollution and reducing our plastic efforts, and working in gardens and trying to increase natural climates and carbon sequestration solutions like trees and like gardening. And in a minute, we're going to hear from some of our panelists who are, in many cases, doing this work and are a part of the youth climate movement. So before we get there, I think it's important that we touch on what is intersectionality and why is climate change an issue that's not only impacting our environment, but is impacting racial justice, is an animal rights issue, is a gender equality issue, an indigenous rights issue, and a gun control issue. All right, we're going to watch this video that talks really quickly about environmental justice. So environmental justice is just one factor of kind of the climate movement and of the great expanse that climate change has on so many different social justice issues. So before we go in and we talk to all these panelists, let's just look at why it's important that we don't just talk about the environmental aspect of climate change, that we talk about these different issues and we look into how, when we're combating climate change, we can also combat these other social justice issues and work together in our solutions to make a better society for all people.
Environmental justice really reflects the fundamental reality that vulnerable communities are all too often subject to the disproportionate burden of pollution and contamination. At the end of the day, when we're talking about environmental impacts, at the heart of it are real people's lives. And if you think about one child who's in her home that maybe has lead paint on the walls, she's drinking water from the tap that might have lead contamination in it. She plays in a playground that has arsenic in the soil and is developing asthma because of the polluting facilities next door. She goes into her school that has mold inside. These are real things that happen on an everyday basis. Not everybody has the ability to simply uproot themselves from a community where they've lived for decades, where their families raise them, where they raise their children. People don't have the financial mobility necessarily to simply get up and go. How do we combat environmental injustice? There are things like litigation. That means continue fighting in the courts, continue fighting to strengthen existing legislation, fighting to ensure that existing legislation is actually being enforced. Things like community organizing, public education, mobilizing the base, and elevating voices. And there's also things like using media as an outlet to get your point across.
Right. So we'll talk more about those actions in a second. But what I like about that video is that it really goes into depth about how climate change is an issue that disproportionately impacts students and people of color and people who are living in lower class and in poverty. So when we're talking about climate change, we're also talking about climate justice. We're talking about how do we, in impacting climate change, in combating climate change, we also combat systemic racism and we combat these other problems that are impacting our society right now. Right. And now we are going to move on to today's panel. So we have a just super exciting list of panelists here with us today. We have Purva, we have Robbie, we have Hannah, we have Shiv, we have Jocelyn, and we have Monica. So if you have any questions right now, feel free to put them in the chat. We will also be taking those questions as we go along with our panel. So first off, we have Apurva, and Apurva is a 17-year-old environmental activist and high school senior from New Jersey. Her passion for using science to help our planet has led her to work with organizations like Earth Echo International as a member of their Youth Leadership Council and Think Ocean Global as a regional coordinator for New Jersey and Delaware. This coming year, Apurva will be a keynote speaker at the Clean Water Celebration in April and begin pursuing a major in environmental science. Apurva, we are so excited to have you here today. You are doing such incredible work, and we can't wait to hear more about everything that you're doing and how others can get involved. We have Robbie. Robbie Bond created his nonprofit Kids Speak for Parks to ensure that our national parks and monuments remain protected long into the future. He is working to build an army of activists, including fourth grade students, who can visit our national parks free of charge, who will stand up and speak up for the parks. He began his campaign in April 2017 as a fourth grader in response to President Trump's executive order to review and possibly eliminate 27 of our national monuments. Robbie, we are so excited to have you here today. What a great friend of mine, and super excited that you can celebrate Earth Day with all of us. All right, we have Hannah. Hannah is a high school junior at Phillips Andover from Boston, Massachusetts. She has been advocating for climate justice through petitions, lobbying, and organizational and awareness outreach since elementary school. Currently, she is leading a climate lobby group at our high school representing the Citizens Climate Lobby Youth Action Team. Hannah is a representative of Our Climate in the Massachusetts Youth Climate Coalition. Thank you so much, Hannah, for being here with us today. We can't wait to hear more about your story. Right. Shiv Goel has worked in and around the environmental nonprofit industry, having lobbied Congress with the Citizens Climate Lobby and worked in One Up Action, so international administration as Deputy Director of Operations. Shiv co-founded the Green Consumer Project, a nonprofit organization committed to promoting sustainable consumerism, of which he is Executive Director. He is also on the Youth Advisory Board for Harvard University's Making Caring Common project, as well as a gold recipient of the Presidential Volunteer Service Award. So great to see you, Shiv. We're so excited to have you here today. All right, and then we have Jocelyn. Jocelyn is an environmental education aide for the environmental education team at SF Environment. Before starting at SF Environment, she studied environmental engineering and education at UC Merced, where she aspired to join the engineering workforce, focusing on renewable energy, and looked ahead into a career in teaching. Super excited to have you here, Jocelyn, and to have Monica here as well, and to talk all about what SF Environment is doing. And on that note, we also have Monica, who as an environmental education associate at SF Environment, gets to draw from her diverse work experiences to offer creative and equitable solutions in climate change education for K-12 students in classrooms throughout San Francisco. She has experience interning in the nonprofit and private sector, directing a 3-day Zero Waste Festival, and most recently serving as a USA Country Coordinator for the United States COI 16 to be held in Scotland in 2021. Wow. Monica earned her bachelor's degree in Spanish and political science, public service with emphasis in foreign and environmental policy from UC Davis in 2018. Thank you so much for being here with us, Monica. We can't wait to hear more about your story and what you have to share with all of us. All right, so with that, welcome all of our panelists. Thank you so much for being here. We're excited to have all of you. I think our first question is just, what do you have to share with us? What work are you doing? I know we just touched on that, but what is it like to be an activist? What is it like to be doing this work? And what else can you tell us about what you're doing right now? So on that, anyone can start. Just feel free to speak up.
Sure, I'll go first. And again, hi, I'm Robbie Bond. Sarah had a great introduction for me, so I'm not going to add anything more. But for me, what it means to be a youth activist is, in my day-to-day life, I encourage other kids, especially in my school, to be mindful of their carbon footprint and environmental impact, and also to consider what they can do as an individual to help combat climate change, and also with my work with the National Park Service. I've worked a lot to help reinstate Bears Ears and Grand Circus Escalante national monuments. So I kind of just encourage kids to help out in their communities and do whatever they can as an individual.
Awesome. Hannah, do you maybe want to go next?
Yeah, I can go. A little bit different from Robbie. I focus less on the individual. I think a lot of the responsibility falls on the government and corporations that pollute the most into the environment, and those impacts disproportionately fall onto people that have less or people of color. So I've really been focusing more on lobbying my legislators, organizing other people to lobby my legislators. I think that has a really profound impact. And it definitely isn't glorious work. It's hard to know what impact you have. You're just chipping away at this problem. But I think it is really important.
Great. Monica, do you want to share?
Sure. Yeah, thanks for your introduction. So my name is Monica and I use she, her pronouns. I'm an environmental education associate with the Department of the Environment here in San Francisco. And so mostly what my job entails is working with a lot of youth and elevating their voices, getting to educate on zero waste and water issues, collaborating with different youth on projects that they're working on and putting on events for them to allow them to learn more about how they can make a difference in the environmental space. And I think that working for the government in some ways is like, it's like activism in some ways, but really not in other ways. And I think that the way that I think about how I'm an activist in my work is that we get to bring in like a lot of an equity lens, and we get to bring in a lot of like multilingualism and just listening a lot to the public to gain a lot of understanding about where they're coming from and meeting them where they are.
Awesome. And I think that's a great transition into Jocelyn.
Thank you so much for having us here today. That introduction was really great. And again, my name is Jocelyn Navoa. I use she, her pronouns, and I also work for the environmental education team at San Francisco SF Environment, or the San Francisco Department of the Environment. We're known both ways, and I actually work really closely with Monica. We're both under the same team. I don't have much to add, really. We do a lot of the same work. We're here teaching San Francisco youth, bringing awareness to them on what's going on, with climate change, what it is, what maybe they can do to get involved. And as Monica stated, like with government work, it's really difficult to bring activism into it. We are restricted by certain things, and it's really difficult to bring that forward. But as she mentioned, we're trying to bring that in through being as diverse as possible, bringing multilingual presentations and outreach to youth all across San Francisco, as well as bringing an equity lens. And something too, we're really trying hard to make sure that the youth really understand it's individual action, but we also need to start from the top down and see what we can do. How can we get those in power to really listen to us and move us forward?
Awesome. All right, Apurva and then Shiv. Sounds good.
Awesome. So hi, everyone, and thank you guys so much for having me here. I will just kind of reintroduce myself a little bit because I think a slightly old bio was used. But my main focus right now, in addition to being on the Earth Echo Youth Leadership Council, is my organization that I founded called Youthify. And Youthify is really a place for young people from around the world who are passionate about our environment to connect, collaborate, and support each other. So the goal is for Youthify to be the place for youth environmentalists to get started in this work when they really don't know where to start. And I think this webinar has done a fantastic job of giving you guys, a great kind of overview of the problem and ways that you can take action. And our goal really is to be that unifying place for Gen Z in the environmental movement, because we realize that we're all kind of working towards the same goal, but we're often working kind of independently. So Youthify aims to be that spot for the youth environmental movement to centralize and kind of take a step forward together. So it's also a great place to find opportunities and meet your peers who are involved in various environmental work. And yeah, that's kind of what I've been working on mostly right now. I think like what, really sort of inspires me to be an activist is knowing that we can make a change in other people's lives. And, like I think everyone has touched on, the systemic aspect of activism is super difficult and can be often not as rewarding, just because it is kind of chipping away at a huge problem. But at the same time, something that I always like to say is that, you're still an activist, even if you only change one person's mind in like your entire career as an activist. And that person could even be yourself, just by, educating yourself more, speaking to other people, and kind of broadening your knowledge. So you really only have to change one mind to be an activist. And if you can change, one other person in your family or a friend that you have, if you can change their mind too, then that's even better. And if you can keep doing that and keep doing it, you are going to have an impact, and that impact does matter. And it's important that people realize that, you don't have to be, Greta in order to be an activist. There's a lot of space in between that and kind of doing nothing. So I always encourage people to take some action, whatever that may be. If you're more comfortable like emailing your legislators, then do that. If you're more comfortable talking to your friends about the climate crisis, then do that, but do something. It's really important that everyone feels like they have the opportunity to take action. And because honestly, you all do have the ability to take action. And, even if it's convincing your parents to like drive a little bit less and take public transport more, or vote for, candidates who support environmental policy, that can be really important too. So don't, discount the value of what you can do within your own home and within your own self.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. And then Shiv.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. And Sarah, great to see you again as always. As a little recap, my name is Shiv Goel, pronouns he, him, and I'm the co-founder and executive director at the Green Consumer Project. The GCP is a nonprofit organization that serves as a platform for individuals to find environmentally friendly brands and products. That a lot of that came out of the fact that when I was trying to get into the environmental movement and take individual action, I realized that there was a huge lack of resources for people, to shop consciously, to locate things. And so that's really where that idea came out. But simultaneously, we're also trying to work from the top down and put pressure on both corporations, on educational institutions, on individuals who, have a great influence on youth. And likewise, we're working with, I believe, over a dozen organizations at this point to turn their merchandise and their products eco-friendly and sustainable, and to engage in those kinds of initiatives. I think being an activist, a lot of like what a purpose said, is that it starts at a really basic level. Activism starts first and foremost with educating yourself. All of us up here have worked in the environmental realm for however many years, but we never got involved in it until, say, sixth grade, where you learned about it from your science teacher, or, you saw something on Instagram about it, about an issue that you didn't really understand. You guys being here at this webinar, listening to us, or just, wanting to learn more about climate change is a great starting point of educating yourself so that you can educate others, and learning more about issues that are important to you so that you can likewise turn that around and make sure that, this is an issue that you care about and something you can advocate for, because there's so many issues in the world. And activism really just does start with education and the motivation, the will to want to make a change.
Awesome. Such important points brought up from each and every one of you. As our next question, what are some of the challenges that you've had to face? I know that it's not all easy work that we're doing. So what have some of those challenges been? And then how have you been able to overcome them? And what are some of those lessons that you might have learned? And anyone can start on this point, so just feel free to unmute.
I can actually get started with this, and it's, for me, the most difficult thing is really getting, the word out to people, bringing awareness. Like, we can say as much as we want, but it's really about how people are listening to us, what exactly they're saying. Are they seeing us being too aggressive? Are we being too empathetic? What do they see us as, and how can we get into a conversation with them without offending anybody or talking down to someone as well? It gets really difficult, especially when we're talking to youth at SF Environment, because we want to make all youth be heard. We want to make sure that they know that we're here for them, and we really want to take in their feedback. But I think because there's a huge disconnect between, being young and then having an adult talking to you about these things, it's like, I don't know, you're an adult, shouldn't you know what to do? Or you're an adult, you know everything already. And it becomes really difficult to get that kind of feedback that we need, because we definitely need feedback from the youth. There is a type of eco anxiety, that's going around all the time, and we are trying our best to help with that. And it becomes difficult when we don't know how to engage in that conversation as well. Or at least that's what I found difficult in my own work, and even at home, just talking to my family and my friends. How do we start that conversation? How do we get it going and get it to a place where we can all understand each other and there's no hate going around?
Going off of Jocelyn, I think I also like struggled with something similar. I guess I've experienced a lot of frustration in terms of my own climate anxiety. And to combat that, I've like done individual things like what Robbie was saying, like composting at home, driving less, et cetera, et cetera. But I think my frustration comes more from like, I feel like us as youth should not have to bear the burden of like lobbying our legislators for a livable environment for our future. And like if we have kids or choose to have kids in the future, I feel like that should not fall on us. And those are like our elected officials are falling short on their promise to keep that world livable for us in the future. And the second point I wanted to make about difficulties that I've been facing recently is I lobby for the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act through CCL. But through my other organization, Our Climate, we've been addressing a lot of the environmental justice issues with that bill and with carbon pricing in general or corporate polluter fees that often disproportionately impact lower income communities. So I think like grappling with policies that none of them are perfect, but which ones are step forward and which ones are actually a step back has been really difficult for me. And I think speaking with a lot of people with a lot of different perspectives has helped me to come to terms with that and like figure out what I want to support and what I don't want to support.
And to go off that a little bit, I think being youth, number one, as Hannah said, we shouldn't have to deal with the burden, but because the environment is kind of, it's our future. We are, going to inherit the environment one day. It's the unfortunate truth that we have to deal with the consequences of our predecessors' actions. But it's pretty unfortunate that those same people who are in power, whether that be legislators, whether that be, people who are running, nonprofit executives who are adults, being youth, it seems that, our voices are kind of marginalized because people consider us, less educated, less involved, we care less about the environment. It's difficult, honestly, being a youth activist, having to face that. But I think the fact that there are so many of us, when you see so many amazing climate movements, if you've seen the turnout, on social media, even before COVID, when you had in-person strikes in cities all around the world of youth who were dropping school and just going out and making a change, it gives me so much hope that there are so many youth who care about the environment and about our future, and that with our activism, as we're spreading our voices and our messages more and more, we can make change and we can, I guess, impact legislators and people in power enough.
Yeah, I really agree with what everyone's been saying. So I'm going to add kind of my piece. When I started my nonprofit, I was 9, so I kind of got a lot of the age problems that Shiv talked about. But one of the biggest problems for me was trying to get the word out to other people, and mainly like my strategies for explaining the impacts of climate change. And when I started, I was mainly focusing on the downsizing of the national parks and monuments. And I found that a lot of kids aren't really interested in that. Recently, climate change has been a really big topic in schools, so that's kind of changed with time. But when I started out, it was really hard because of my age to promote my nonprofit. But everyone said I really agree with, so that's great.
Yeah, definitely agree with what both Robbie and Shiv said. Young people not being taken seriously is one of the biggest issues I've definitely had to face, as well as this sort of odd phenomenon that I had happened to me a lot this summer, where I was attending a lot of conferences and, various meetings, where there were all these, super professional, really inspiring people speaking, and they would keep telling me and other youth in the audience that we had the power to take action, that we had, powerful voices, that we should use our voices. And then the presentation would just kind of like end there without ever actually mentioning how to take action or, what are some, ways that young people can really get involved. And so it was this very frustrating experience because I was like super, inspired and like riled up by this like amazing speech or presentation that someone had given. And then I had no way to actually like turn that energy and that enthusiasm into action and into results. So it was a very kind of frustrating process that happened to me at several different conferences over the summer. And that's a lot of what Youthify was born out of, was the desire to stop inspiring young people in favor of empowering them. So I would say that was one of the biggest things that I struggled with personally, was just getting adults to understand that doesn't really have much of an effect. It's a very sort of like placative thing to say, like use your voice, because it doesn't actually have much meaning, but it feels nice to hear. So that was kind of something that I struggled with. And I would say to any, adults that are watching this, please try to give young people ways to get involved, and even other youth. If you're telling your friends to take action, try to give them concrete things to do, because people find it very difficult to like process the information that you've given them, especially if it's about the climate crisis. It can be quite depressing. So it's good if they can have kind of a concrete outlet for that frustration and that energy.
Yeah, and I'll just add, I think you all said really wonderful things, and I appreciate all of your insights and wisdom and everything. And I think like for me, a lot of what you said really resonated, and I think a lot of it like sounded like kind of frustration to some degree. And I think I can like relate to feeling frustrated in different ways being in this space, like feeling frustrated that progress isn't happening quickly enough, or not feeling heard, or feeling like there's not opportunities to get involved when you want to get involved, or asking for more and not getting that, or what have you. And I think that as like someone who is, I'm 25, so I think old for us all here. I've like run into this place of like burnout to some degree of like, things are not happening. I'm not making the change that I wanted to make. I am not having the impact that I wanted to have. And so I think that that's been like a big learning experience for me in the last like year or so. And so I think for me, like getting to work in this space, that can be really, really challenging, and having to balance this like thing of having all this passion for, social justice and environmental justice, and also like working with like people who might not agree with you, and balancing that passion with the compassion for those people is really important and really hard. And also I would say that like getting to work with youth is something that I really enjoy doing, because youth inspire me and like are so just like fresh and have so much like innovation. And I really love the opportunity to get to work with youth, because it makes continuing going on in the climate space like easier, I think, for me. And I think having networks of people who are also in the climate space to talk with them, and like to have conversations and be like, are you tired? Yeah, I'm tired. Okay, you're tired too? Cool, got it. And just doing self-care, really like important things that I try to do, but it's also like really hard. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, and I think off of that point, just knowing that you're not alone. Not only are there other people that care, but there's other people who are taking action, who are actively involved, and who want to help you and support you in the work that you're doing. So if anyone on here is at all feeling, not supported, I think just looking around and even at our amazing speakers and seeing that there's other people who do care, who want to help you, and who want to see how they can support you. So off of that, does maybe one or two people, I see we have a question in the chat, maybe for some of our youth, are you being heard by youth and adults equally? Are you being heard more by either age group, one or the other? Does anyone want to really quickly just touch on that?
Well, for me, I feel like it's kind of equal, but I feel like kids are more likely to look up to another kid and want to listen to them more than an adult. So I feel like slightly more to kids that want to listen to what I have to say. And I feel like it's a fairly common thing across activism. So
Yeah, I think I would agree with Robbie. When talking with adults, it's often like very patronizing. I think they like assume that I don't know what I'm talking about. And I think even when we work with groups with adults, and I work in like mostly youth spaces, I find that the youth end up doing like a lot of the work, which is sort of unreasonable considering that we are like kids and minors, and we should be helping them and using our voices and lending them to them. But we end up doing all of the organizing, and they kind of just add in at the end.
Great. Okay, I think just as, kind of a wrap-up question, what is your advice for anyone who's watching, who wants to get involved, who wants to do something? What is, as Apurva was saying, what are those actions that they can take to go out and to make a difference? Any advice that you might have, I know I'd love to hear it, and I'm sure everyone else would love to hear it too. And again, anyone can start on that. And if anyone would also like to answer the other question in the chat about SDGs, feel free to do so as well.
So I would just really quickly say one really concrete action that you can take is finding a community of other young people who support you and people who will just like back you up and share what you're working on and really promote what you're doing. I have literally found that to be the most helpful and beneficial thing in pretty much everything that I've done. I don't think that I would have been able to have the confidence or the encouragement to do what I do today, if not for the amazing young people that I've met along the way who've really been there for me. So what I would say is that if you can find like an environmental club at your school, some kind of like global group of young people, literally anything, it could just be even other like adults in your area who are working on like a climate reality chapter or another chapter of some kind of global movement. If there's a way that you can plug into a community, not just to kind of like learn what they're doing and get involved with their work, but to literally just have people to like bounce ideas off of and get support from and literally have them share things that you post on social media. Like it can be as simple as that, but having a community is one of the most like important and beneficial things that you can do. And it's super easy. You can just DM people on Instagram, even if you're like, hey, I love the work that you're doing, I would love to like chat with you more and learn about how you do what you do. That is honestly some of the nicest like DMs that I've received are people just asking things like that. And it's always a heartwarming experience to receive. And 90% of the time people will respond to you, especially if they're other young people. Just because it feels nice to receive. And I think nobody would say no to just like growing their network a little bit and meeting another cool young person. So I definitely recommend just like reaching out to people over DM like that or email or even like LinkedIn if you're on LinkedIn. Those are all like fantastic ways to just kind of keep building your community and growing your impact.
Yeah, I
sure.
completely agree with I might mispronounce your name, but I think it's Apurva. Is that your name? Is that how you pronounce it? Awesome. I was worried. But I completely agree with what you said. And another really good benefit of finding a group to meet other activists is that you get a lot of opportunities from working with the group. For example, I've worked with the Ocean Heroes Boot Camp, which is a sort of like a summer camp, but specifically for environmental activists in the ocean. And that gave me so many opportunities to work with other environmentalists. So like what Apurva said, don't be afraid to reach out to other kids. It's super beneficial. There's no reason not to, because you hardly ever get a no from a youth activist. But my other advice, and this is kind of vague, but make sure to keep your confidence up. I feel like a lot of people get discouraged, especially kids, when they've been shut down or they've been told no by groups, and or even worse, if they've lobbied in like Congress and gotten a no, that really shuts someone down. But I really encourage kids to persevere because eventually it'll always go well. And that's my advice for kids starting environmentalism.
Definitely to go off of that. I was talking a lot about education earlier, but it's also important to recognize that, although the environmental crisis is such a huge issue in society, it may seem that like, individual action doesn't make a difference. It really does. Al Gore once said that the environmental crisis is a lot like the COVID-19 pandemic. It takes everyone doing their individual parts, wearing a mask, social distancing for the crisis to end. It's the same thing with the environmental movement. It takes everyone taking those small little steps, like shopping consciously or reducing your consumerism, taking colder showers, eating vegetarian diets. Those little actions that we all take contribute so much. And educating yourself and learning about what you can do on an individual level is so important. It's a great place to start beyond just, volunteering or, taking action. You don't have to start an organization or, go speak places to take climate action. Climate action is possible on so many levels, and it's a great place to start.
Yeah, so I've actually added a couple things in the chat that SF Environment is providing, but as you can see by my background here, oh, wrong one, it's mirrored, sorry. Right now, we have Climate Action Month, so for April, it's not just today, Earth Day. We made it into a whole month full of events that you can attend from our partners, organizations that we're affiliated with, and so forth. And I put the link in the chat box. You can also do things like find outdoor actions on social media, as other youth here have said. You can volunteer at different groups. Like you can look up groups, see what groups are in your area that you can volunteer for. SF Environment in particular has internships and fellowships that you can join. Our SF Youth Works internship that is aimed towards 11th and 12th grade high school students. Then we have the Climate Corps Fellowship with Strategic Energy Innovations and the Civic Spark Fellowship with AmeriCorps. So there's so many great ways to get involved. If you want some professional experience, you can do internships and fellowships. If you want to volunteer, you can definitely find groups in your area. Like even in San Francisco, we have urban farms like Alamany Farm and even the Garden for the Environment and Monica, correct me if I'm wrong, the Literary for Environmental Justice? I could be wrong there.
Literacy for environmental justice.
Thank you so
Killed it.
much. Awesome. Yeah, definitely go check those out. And, you know, for this month and every month thereafter, let's continue to make some change.
I'll kind of synthesize what Apurva, sorry if I mispronounced that, was saying earlier, and also what Shiv was saying too, just on the pieces about like getting involved. I think there are lots of like levels of getting involved, right? Like you might consider yourself an environmentalist and be like, I want to do all of the things and I want to like be so involved and I want to do this fellowship. I want to like start a nonprofit. All of those things are wonderful things. And there also might be people who are like, I don't have time for that, or this is not my passion. This is not the way that I want to spend my time. But there are like little things that you can do. And I think like giving yourself credit for the little things that you do is really important, and giving your friends credit for the little things that they do is important. And I think that getting involved in a way that is meaningful for you will allow you to stay connected and be passionate about it for longer. Like if you like music, you could write music about climate change or something. If you, again, like kind of what Apurva was saying, just like there's lots of ways to get involved, whether it's like petitions, whether it's protesting, whether it's art. There's so many different ways to get involved. So thinking about which way is most beneficial for you, I think is going to be really impactful. And the last thing I'll say, just to this question from Bob, yes, I do work with the UN. I volunteer for COI 16, which is like the youth version of COP26. And so I can put my contact information in, but I'll share the link for our website. And we're going to be holding some webinars over the summer for opportunities to get involved in workshopping a policy document that we'll share at COP26. So yeah.
Is that everyone? Hannah, did you go?
I think I can just pass on this one. I think everyone else had a really great point.
Sure, no worries. Wow, what great recommendations, what great advice. We will be putting all of our panelists' information in the chat below. We also have a ton of different information that all of our panelists have put in so far, so please make sure to check out all of that. So many opportunities to get involved. Thank you to Apurva, to Shiv, to Robbie, to Jocelyn, to Monica, to Hannah for joining us today. I know I was inspired and I was so motivated by all of your words and by all of the work that you're doing. So yes, continue doing such great work. We're excited to see all of your journeys and how they adapt and grow from here. And have a great Earth Day. We are going to now move on to the next part of our webinar, where we're just going to recap some of those actions and specific things that everyone can do. Right. Awesome. So I'm going to share my screen again to go over this. Right. So Siona is now going to share some of these actions, what you can do to combat climate change and make a difference.
Yes, thank you. And now that we've listened to that amazing panelist section, we're going to list off some examples of what you can do. We've already talked, our amazing panelists have mentioned individual action versus group action. We'll list some for you here. So individual action is some ways you can take action in your own life and changing it to become more sustainable, having small steps to have a more sustainable lifestyle yourself, whether it be Meatless Monday, starting out small. If you are scared of going into an entire vegetarian or vegan diet, you can start something small, like just once a week. Reducing your waste, it's always an amazing thing, whether it be food waste, your plastic, all of this works. Using less transportation, finding different ways like biking, buying from thrift stores. That's an amazing way to combat fast fashion. And starting a garden, if that's what you're interested in gardening, that's always the best way. And even planting a tree, there's a lot of cool opportunities where you can plant trees. And now moving on to group action. Other ways, the most simplest and kind of the best way to first start getting involved, and many of our panelists have mentioned, is starting a conversation with others, asking them, having a climate conversation, you could call it, asking them, what do you think about climate change? What are your thoughts on it? And to be as a framework, whenever you're having a conversation with this, it's always really easy to get frustrated or overwhelmed because climate crisis, the climate action movement, everything, climate change is a terrifying subject sometimes, but just be mindful to be respectful whenever you're talking to someone about this, and always just ask, hey, what do you think? And just have an open mind whenever you're talking to people about climate change. It really helps. You might learn a lot of things just by talking to one person, learning their perspective. Organizing a beach cleanup, getting involved with an organization, all the ones in the chat, oh my gosh, so many, starting a community garden, or writing a letter to a local politician or legislatives, all the things. All of these ways can help. All these are ways you can take group action. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. All right, now just an overview of other specific actions that you can take. Here at Climate Now, we have a hero program with 10 specific actions, many of which we just listed that you can take to help the planet. So if you want those, again, you can visit climatenow.solutions/get involved to become a part of our hero program. Once you complete all 10 of those actions, you get certified as a Climate Now hero. We send you a certification and you get to join our Climate Now Hero online virtual program where you can connect with other youth heroes who are doing this work and making a difference. You can volunteer with us if you are a young person, or you can join our board of advisors if you are an adult. If you are a young person, you want to get more involved, this is just the opportunity for you. Our volunteers do everything from running our social media to planning events like our webinar series, to creating media and creating stories about climate change for our blog, to working with partner organizations. There's just so much that you can do and so many different ways to get involved. We're really open to hearing what you want to do. So if you're interested in volunteering with us as a young person, you can visit www.climatenow.solutions/get involved and send us an email through there. And if you are an adult, you want to help us out, if you have something to share with our youth team, we would so appreciate it. You can go ahead and join us as a board of advisor or join us as an adult ally, give us any advice, share any opportunities or resources that you might have with us. We have a lot to learn, so we be super excited to have you on our team. We also have so many partner organizations, as you've just heard from so many of our speakers. So if you are interested in getting involved, we also really recommend checking out their websites and learning more about them, because they have so many other opportunities that might fit you really well. So go ahead and check that out on our website. We have a whole collection of different resources to learn more about climate change, both for students and for educators. So you can visit our website to find that. And then lastly, you can follow us on social media. And if you have the means to, you can donate to our GoFundMe. We rely on in-kind donations to continue these programs, continue doing this work. So we'd really appreciate it if you are able to donate to that GoFundMe. And then now what everybody's been waiting for is our giveaway. So if your name is chosen, please stay afterwards so we can just get your email and then we can figure out all the logistics with you. So to recap, 10 people will win Hope, a book by Alyssa Milano, and a chocolate prize from Tony Chocolonely's Chocolates. So with that, I am just going to stop sharing and kind of go through our participant page and randomly select 10 people. Right. So the first name, drum roll, is Delina. So Delina, congratulations. Please stay afterwards to meet with us and we can figure out those logistics. All right, congratulations. Our second name is Crizia Sanchez. So please stay afterwards to collect your prize. Our next name, not looking, is Anushka. So Anushka, congratulations. You are a winner of our prize package. So go ahead and stay afterwards as well. Not looking. We have Ava. So Ava, you as well can stay afterwards. Is that, Sienna, has that been 4 or 5 so far?
4.
Okay, awesome.
Wait, I believe it. I read one down. Okay, Delina, Crizia, and then who was after Crizia?
Feel free to unmute if that was you. I believe that was Ava.
Okay, no, that's the.
Okay.
I can count. I apologize. Keep going.
Okay, awesome. Lindsay, congratulations. All right, that's been 5. Please, anyone unmute if I'm going off the wrong number. All right. Rosetta, congratulations. That's 6. And then we have Jude, 7. Congratulations, Jude. We have, I'm like trying to go through there. We have Wan. Is that correct? So Wan, congratulations. Like going, Alize, if that's how you pronounce your name, congratulations. Siona, was that, anyone been counting?
2 more.
How many more?
2. 1, 2.
Okay. I'm like keep getting on the same person that we just called out. So, where is it? Mackenzie, congratulations. You are receiving our prize package. And then last but not least, Anne, congratulations. So if I just called out your name, please stay afterwards to claim your prize, so we can figure out logistics again. Right, awesome. And then I will just share my screen for the last part. So thank you everyone for joining us. I know I had a great time chatting all about climate change, all about climate action, learning from our amazing panelists. You can visit us at www.climatenow.solutions. You can follow us on Instagram, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and then that QR code will bring you back to our website. I hope you enjoyed this webinar. We will be sending out an email after the event around this weekend, just with a follow-up email and a survey. So if you are able to take that survey, give us some feedback. We'd really appreciate that, and we'd love to hear more from you. On that note, you have the power to change the world. Don't be afraid to go out there to take action, try something new, go out, get involved. It might seem a little scary at first, but I promise it'll start to be really fun and exciting, and you will meet so many amazing people along the way. So thank you everybody for joining us. I hope you have a great day and a great Earth Day, and please stay in contact. And again, if you were one of our giveaway winners, please stay afterwards to claim your prize.